Well, hi everybody, welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. I was lucky enough to have gone to British public schools while growing up in Bermuda, and one of the many advantages of that education was a chance to get to know Rudyard Kipling. In school, we read about Gunga Din and the British in India. At home, we read Just So stories to learn how the rhinoceros got its skin and how the leopard got its spots. But lately, a poem of Kipling's has been making the rounds, and it's an important poem because it really encapsulates how and why things seem to fall apart just as they reach their zenith. And I'd like to read that poem for you, but before I do, I need to translate it from English into English, more specifically from the British English of 1919 to the American English of 2012. The poem is called The Gods of the Copybook Headings, and really, all I need to do to complete the translation is to change two phrases and a word or two to keep up the rhyme. Now, one of those two phrases is the title of the poem itself. Copybook headings were small aphorisms, simple little statements of common sense and virtue that were printed at the head of a student's copybooks for them to copy over and over to practice penmanship and learn some wisdom and virtue in the bargain. A copybook heading might be something like this: "There's nothing so kingly as kindness, and nothing so royal as truth." So, the gods of the copybook headings really means the gods of wisdom and virtue. And set against the gods of wisdom and virtue are other gods, which Kipling called the gods of the marketplace. But marketplace had a different meaning then, too. Today, when we say marketplace, we tend to think of Wall Street and finance, but in Kipling's time, the marketplace was a bustling hive of rumor and gossip, the place where fads just ran wild, where reason was scarce, and the latest nonsense was in fashion. So I'm going to change gods of the marketplace to the gods of the here and the now. And so, with the trepidation and begging of forgiveness that any author asks when he changes the words of a far greater writer, here's Kipling's poem for modern ears. As I pass through my reincarnations, in every age I vow to make my proper prostrations to the gods of the here and the now. Peering through reverent fingers, I watch them flourish and fall, and the gods of wisdom and virtue, I notice, always outlast them all. We were living in trees when they met us. They showed us each in turn that water would certainly wet us, as fire would certainly burn, but we found them lacking in uplift, vision, and breadth of mind, so we left them to teach the gorillas while we followed the march of mankind. We moved as their spirits listed. We never knew why or how, being neither cloud nor wind-born like the gods of the here and the now. But they always caught up with our progress, and presently word would come that a tribe had been wiped off its ice field, or the lights had gone out in Rome. With hopes that our world is built on, they were utterly out to sea. They denied that wealth could be printed. They denied that lunches were free. They denied that wishes were horses. They denied that a pig had wings. So we worship the gods of the here and the now, who promised these beautiful things. When the Cambrian measures were forming, they promised perpetual peace. They swore, if we gave them our weapons, that the wars of the tribes would cease. But when we disarmed, they sold us and delivered us bound to our foe. And the gods of wisdom and virtue said, "Stick to the devil you know." On the first Jurassic sandstones, we were promised the fuller life, which started by loving our neighbor and ended by loving his wife, till our women had no more children and the men lost reason and faith. And the gods of wisdom and virtue said, "The wages of sin is death." In the Carboniferous epoch, we were promised abundance for all by robbing selected Peter to pay for collective Paul. But though we had plenty of money, there was nothing our money could buy. And the gods of wisdom and virtue said, "If you don't work, you die." Then the gods of the here and now tumbled, and their smooth-tongued wizards withdrew, and the hearts of the meanest were humbled, and began to believe it was true, that all is not gold that glitters, and 2 + 2 make 4. And the gods of wisdom and virtue limped up to explain it once more. Now, as it will be in the future, it was at the birth of man. There are only 4 things certain since social progress began: that the dog returns to his vomit, and the sow returns to her mire, and the burnt fool's bandaged finger goes wobbling back to the fire. And after all this is accomplished, and the brave new world begins, when all men are paid for existing, and no man must pay for his sins, as surely as water will wet us, as surely as fire will burn, the gods of wisdom and virtue with terror and slaughter return. You know, America was home to the gods of wisdom and virtue for most of its existence. If we abandon them further, they will return with terror and slaughter, and yet they're not cruel gods. They're simply gods of justice. They are, in fact, the gods of cause and effect. By following their example, the gods of wisdom and virtue have given us all of this wealth, all this security, and all this luxury. All they asked of us was a little wisdom and a little virtue, a little common sense here, a little good behavior over there. But we've been crashing on their couches and bumming rides from these gods for a long, long time now, and I really am afraid that the gods of wisdom and virtue have had enough. And now they want their stuff back.